everyone, this is Liz from the Beverly Public Library. Welcome to another episode of STEAM Scribbles, where we explore different science, technology, engineering, and math concepts together. This week we're going to take a closer look at types of clouds. And I know you hear the word types of clouds and you think, maybe not. Like, when you think of the word cloud, you probably think of something specific. You don't think about a lot of different types. So to start with, before we start talking about the different types, let's draw what comes to mind when we think of a cloud. So for me, I tend to think of these big, fluffy, white clouds. You know, the kind that could be in different shapes, like maybe like a bunny. And I'm gonna draw my ground here so we can see how high up they are. And just for fun, I'm going to color it in blue. But since there's different types of clouds, maybe the sort of cloud that came to mind for you wasn't the big fluffy white kind that I just drew. Maybe yours are gray and kind of flat, or maybe they're thinner and wispier, maybe they're higher up or lower to the ground. There's all sorts of shapes and sizes that clouds can come in, and that is what we're going to talk about. So how can that be the case? How can it be that I drew this kind of cloud and you might have drawn a bunch of different other types of clouds and they all look like clouds? Well, to start with, we have to think about how clouds are formed. So clouds are formed from water droplets. Think about after it rains, you see a bunch of puddles on the ground, and then a few days later the puddles disappear. Now, some of that water from the puddles sinks into the soil and feeds the plants, but some of it evaporates or disappears into the air, and it stops being a liquid, water, and becomes a gas that we cannot see. When water evaporates into the air, it collects over time in the air until it becomes tightly packed together, and when that happens, it forms into a cloud. So clouds are actually formed of water molecules. The amount of water and how high up in the sky the clouds form determine the type of cloud that it will form into. Now, there are a lot of different types of clouds, but there are three main types. So to start with, let's get a fresh piece of paper, and on our new piece of paper we're going to draw three segments, or just draw three lines, so that we have a place to draw each type of cloud and we can compare them side by side when we're done. And I'll just draw a line as well for the ground on each of my segments. So the first main type of cloud is called a cirrus cloud. Cirrus clouds are really high up in the air and they're very thin and wispy. They almost look like if the wind blew hard enough, they would just blow away and completely disappear. So let's, in our first panel, draw some cirrus clouds. So they're not going to be fluffy like my clouds on my first scribble were. And they're going to be as high up as we can get them. Cirrus clouds can actually show you which way the wind is blowing. So if you look at the direction that they are pointing in, that's the way the wind's blowing. So in my case, it's blowing from the left side of my page to the right side of my page because it's collecting over here. Usually you'll see cirrus clouds when it's nice out and it's kind of sunny and blue skies, which I will color in now. But because the wind is blowing, they usually signal that the weather is about to change within the next day or so. So when you see those, you might expect rain within the next day. Now, you may not know this, but the higher up you go in the sky, the colder it is. So even though all clouds are formed from water droplets, because it's so cold where the cirrus clouds are, the water has frozen into ice. So actually, cirrus clouds are made up of ice droplets. Moving on to the second main type of cloud. The second main type of cloud is called a cumulus cloud. And that's because they accumulate into bigger, fluffier clouds. They usually are in the middle of the sky, lower down than cirrus clouds, but higher up than some other clouds like the ones that we have not drawn yet. And they usually look like big piles of cotton piled up high. Where the cirrus clouds were thin and wispy, these are thick and fluffy. And since they're lower down in the sky, they're actually a mix of ice droplets and water droplets. Some of that water has frozen, but not all of it. It's a little warmer where these clouds are. Cumulus clouds are also known as fair weather clouds because it's always nice out when you see cumulus clouds. Cumulus clouds are the sort of clouds that you go out and you lay in the grass and you want to look up at them and try to see all different sorts of shapes in them. Since it's nice and sunny out, I'll go ahead and draw that blue sky again. And we could add in a sun, but I won't do that. Our last main type of cloud is called a stratus cloud. Stratus clouds are the lowest out of these three. They're close to the ground, and they're also flat, and they're gray. Cirrus clouds and cumulus clouds are white, so I didn't color them in, but I will color in the stratus clouds, and you can shade them in too using whatever pencil you have at hand. And those usually show up on like the kind of gray days that you think of when the sun isn't out because the clouds are all blocking the sun. And when you see those clouds, that usually means that rain or snow is on the way. So instead of drawing a blue sky, I will draw kind of a gray sky to match. Although probably above the clouds. If we were to fly above like a bird, it might be blue up there, depending on what clouds were up there too. And since stratus clouds are the lowest down, there's no ice in them. They are completely made up of unfrozen water molecules that are collecting and waiting to turn into rain and then rain down and then collect in puddles and then evaporate back into the atmosphere again and become clouds. Maybe a different type of cloud than a stratus cloud. So before we move on, I'm going to write down the names of my clouds so I don't forget. You can do that too, or you can have someone help you to do that. Now that we've taken a look at the three main types of clouds, let's take a look back at our first scribble, the one where we imagined a cloud and drew the first thing that came to mind. So here's my first scribble, and I'm going to compare it to these clouds and see what sort of cloud I imagined. And yours might be different, so make sure to compare yours with the three types and see what you ended up with. So it looks like the ones that I drew were not cirrus clouds because they're not thin and wispy like that. And they're not stratus clouds because they're not gray and flat and lower. It looks like I drew cumulus clouds, the big fluffy white ones that are kind of towards the middle of the sky. And you can see all sorts of shapes in them. There's my bunny. And if you want an additional challenge, you can go outside right now, take a look at the sky and see what sort of clouds are out there, scribble those, and then see if you can figure out what types of the three main types we looked at are out in the sky right now. But whatever types of clouds you end up drawing, be sure to share your scribbles on social media using the hashtag SteamScribbles, and be sure to tune in again next week for another episode of Steam Scribbles. See you next time, Scribblers.